Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hope everyone is doing well today. My name is Larry Christopher Bates. I am the Chief Security Officer for Bitland Global, and today we're going to be talking about the 40 acres and a mule discussion, discussing reparations and the potential impacts and how they could actually be rolled out, potentially using blockchain technology. And if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Gary Rockman. I am an owner of several different companies. Primarily, my background is real estate investing and development, DC and Baltimore. I've been now housing low to medium income families for the last 19 years. And I am a recently published author of a book by the name of Back from Hell and the Devil Didn't Win, How to Free Yourself from Poverty and Grow Generational Wealth.
How's everybody doing? I go by Fasa. We're doing some extraordinary things in a couple major cities regarding blockchain and incentivizing community engagement using smart contracts. Also using artificial intelligence as it pertains to blockchain technology as well. I just want to say, what good is 40 acres if we don't own the digital infrastructure that underwrites the value and how it's exchanged on that real estate? And that's an important thing I hope to be able to discuss here today with everybody.
Hey everyone, my name's Troy Foster. Come out here from Silicon Valley, where I practice law for emerging growth and startup companies. I do corporate securities work at a firm called Perkins Coie, and I've never been to Howard before, so I'm actually quite psyched to be here. It's really great to be with you all, and I look forward to discussing this topic.
Yeah, my name is Chris Mapondera. I'm co-founder of Bill Murray. I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm going to put an international context of what land is all about. When the white man came to Africa, the first thing he wanted was land because of all the resources that were in it. Now, coming from Zimbabwe, we are the only black country that was able to recover its land from the white people. And we've been suffering for that. I'm grateful to our late President Robert Mugabe, who was the beacon of light and brought consciousness about what control of your resources is all about. So I hope I'll be able to share with you how the land issue in our context is all about. Thank you.
So to kick off, I have a few questions that I'm going to pose to the panel about the potential of reparations and the repercussions. So if we're looking at other issues of reparations, we've seen the Holocaust, or even in the case of slave owners getting reparations for their slaves. We are many, many generations after this has happened. What is the amount that's going to be good enough for reparations?
Okay, well, we're starting with an easy question, so I appreciate that. So look, I'll take a crack at that, right? I'm going to come at it from a little bit of an orthogonal angle, though. I think it's okay when you sort of think about how blockchain can help, sort of answer this question. What I think about is, kind of blockchain as a part of a technological solution that can help with the basic principle of fairness that underlies the notion of reparations, right? And so I think rather than a specific amount that sort of ties per person, that it would be more of a fluid kind of solution, that where you combine something like a sort of 23andMe or some of the other kind of DNA testing, along with maybe an algorithmic analysis of how the people's sort of have suffered the impact of kind of unfair policies. I mean, beyond slavery, right? Jim Crow, redlining, all these other sort of injustices, and kind of in the ideal world, right, come up with a score that then ties back to some sort of make good or reparation for that historical injustice.
I actually will try to answer it this way. There's a lot of talk right now of what that number can be. We have some politicians saying somewhere in the billions. We have others saying, somewhere around $17 trillion. We actually, I think that there is a way to kind of figure all that out just from, I'm sure there's a mathematical equation we could do that could figure it all out, right? As it pertains to land and just all the contributions. But from just a study of like a lot of things that have already been promised, from a 40 acres and a mule even, we know that, that was even in its time a bad check, right? A check that was insufficient at its time. And to be honest, so many people don't even realize how many whites actually benefited from that piece. But it was just a promise, and it was a promise that wasn't kept, right? And we understand, too, that in the District of Columbia being a fine example of somebody who's in real estate, but understanding at the same time that when we talk about even property, right, which is, property and contracts, that those things oftentimes, right, depending on the color of your skin and colonialism, can still be taken away, right? So we know that. We've seen it systematically happen right here in the District of Columbia. People who bought homes for little or nothing, their values went up, they couldn't pay the property taxes, and the government, right, basically seized their property, right? And it's the same thing when we think about 40 acres and a mule. It was the government, right, who was really actually enforcing the repossession of the farms that blacks had owned in the late 1800s. So, one of the things, my children, my wife and I have two children, a 10 and an 11-year-old, and I actually used to be a financial advisor and have taught them. I started teaching them how to paper trade when I think my daughter was 7, my son was about 8 or 9. They're about 17 months apart. And since then, they've started their own company, StockUpKids.com or StockUp Kids. They have a YouTube channel. And they go around the country speaking, teaching others how to trade stock. One of the main things that they share, and this is kind of going to be the same with Bitcoin, but one of the main things they share, because we talk to a lot of kids who are brown and black and in impoverished neighborhoods, there's some things that we share that my children actually share with that audience, is that trading, similar to Bitcoin, is colorblind, right? You can have an account and nobody knows who you are, what gender you are, or anything else. And it's a place in which oftentimes we've either avoided or we have not had enough knowledge of, right, to engage in on a level in which we could really prosper. I share a lot as well with people, even when it comes to real estate, is that we, I think, as African Americans or black people in general, because of the struggles we've had in this country, really oftentimes want to lay claim by saying we're the owner, right, of whatever it is. We want to put our stake in the ground and say, this is ours. And the wealthiest people in this nation, actually, we don't know what they own. They don't put their stake in the ground, but they own so much because they control it. And so one of the things that I share with people is understanding land trusts, understanding personal property trust. These are things that even when we talk about Bitcoin that can be combined so that it's not necessarily something that someone can directly connect you with, but that you can control and grow generational wealth. So, I'm trying to answer that in a way that I share with a lot of people. We are the magic, right? We are the magic, and the solution is us. everywhere we go. I love Zimbabwe and how they've handled things. I love Haiti, right? But we also sometimes really forget about Haiti, right? But it is that power of knowing how powerful we are and knowing that if we collectively put our minds and resources together, we can change the outcome. And we don't have to continue to wait on a check that may become insufficient at the time that we receive it.
Those are great points, and actually lead into the next question. So let's assume hypothetically that we do get reparations at some point. How do we implement technology to prevent the reparations from being spoiled for the next generations and make sure that the future generations benefit from it?
I would say that there's a lot of mechanisms that have been put in place to exploit and marginalize ideas that come from the communities of African descendants. I would say that out of our necessity and because of a wealth gap that's no mystery, we're in a position where we take our greatest ideas and we have to participate in diversity and inclusion initiatives, pitch contests, and different things that don't necessarily protect our intellectual property or intellectual capital. I think that in terms of not gentrification, but more so reparations, that we could create our own. I feel that if we were allowed to own our own ideas and allowed to control the digital infrastructure that allows for value to be exchanged within our own ideas, that we would be able to accumulate wealth in our communities and not have to worry about the dollar cycling in the communities of African descendants 6 hours as opposed to our privileged counterparts that the dollar circulates 20, 30 times before it leaves the community. So I'm not sure how other people feel about that approach, but I think it's important for us to do a lot of this on our own. I feel like the ingenuity and the skill and capability is there, but we need to make sure that we learn how to work together first so that we can actually extract the value that's already on the table. If we get a check for reparations, like the brother said, that thing might be obsolete in a couple of years, and what's that going to do for us? We'll just be a part of the cycle again.
If I can, I'd just like to tag on something he said. Someone said earlier that us not understanding what actual money is, right? And just touching on that, right? I often go into a lot of crowds, and we have actually so much wealth that we really walk over those diamonds, right? We walk over them all the time. And again, it goes back to working collectively. So, there was a time where you could trade a mule for a cow, right? Realistically, and that was your currency. That was your money. And there are still places in the world that that's how things are done. There was a time during Jim Crow where we did a lot of exchanging with each other in that form. So, again, it's not necessarily something that folds, or something that shakes or, has a not coins necessarily, but we have to, find the value, in each other. I'm sure, we talk about Silicon Valley. So many of those companies are using intellectual capital in order to blow up and become billion-dollar corporations. But again, I'm sure there are so many brilliant people in our circles, and instead we are again kind of only looking at wealth and value in one way, and it's through the bank account versus all of these other things that hold extreme value that we can exchange for and build with. So, again, 40 acres and a mule, or whatever the case may be, I think we really need to think more collectively and creatively as it pertains to this.
So that's a great point and a great segue into the next question. Who is the we in collectively? When we're talking about the American descendants of slaves, where do we draw the line as to where the we is? And then if we're talking about actual reparations, where somebody said something about a 23andMe test, what percent do you have to be to get reparations? Do we stop with only Americans, or do we continue to spread it across the African continent? What do you guys think?
When we put in the context of the African continent, there's people that have a lot of money to pay. Because we have to claim for the more than 5 million people who were forcibly brought here. That's a lot of money. Nobody can actually have enough money to pay for that. And the opportunities that Africa lost with the transfer of intellectual wealth the 5 million people had. So I would want to turn this around, that obviously from an African perspective, I may not look at the 40 acres and the mule, but I may look at it in the overall, how much land do we control as an African people? Africa is 5 times the size of the United States. It has got probably the monopoly of all the minerals that you can think of. We are still discovering oil in Africa. 3 weeks ago, nobody would have thought of Kenya as an oil exporting country. Angola, West Africa. So when you look at what those resources, what the 5 million people who were brought here could have done to exploit that, there's so much that the black people in this country have contributed to the development of this economy, which is not acknowledged. Now, if we want to put a dollar value to that, I don't think it will even make any sense at all. We have to find another way of how to define the replacement of what we lost. Then secondly, just to bring in the blockchain technology per se, it's a tool that is now beginning to get traction in Africa, in the sense that we have got so much of land distribution. If you want to come and buy land in Africa today, you should have a way in which you can be able to trace how that land has moved from one person to the other and so forth, and how you are utilizing and so forth. So I think that would be a good tool that as we encourage you to come and invest in Africa, you can sit here in Washington, D.C. and be able to trace what is happening with your assets and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, I think about that question from a more just from a practical standpoint, right? Like as a lawyer, so I don't have a good grasp of the policy, right? I mean, I don't really. There's a lot to that, right? That smarter people than me can unpack. But if you kind of go back to the I think it was Special Field Order 15, right? I mean, the kind of the fundamental failure of that came out of it being a kind of a military order, right, in those regions that didn't necessarily have political support. Mm-hmm. So I think when I think about how you make good on that promise, I think it's gotta, there's gotta be sort of like a political groundswell to make it happen, and maybe it dovetails a little bit with this notion of universal basic income that is like a very popular political sort of trend right now, where you kind of marry these and figure out a way to kind of implement it, in conjunction with something like that.
On those notes, the point earlier was made that there are plenty of black wealthy people, and we have wealth in our communities that could effectively be our own form of reparations. If black people are to execute reparations for ourselves, how would that work? Or in the case of, as you're saying, we have the capital, it's just not collective. How do we get to that point where we're creating our own reparations?
Well, I would say that you can't do anything without people, and none of this technology matters without people. And we have a lot of people, and we spend more money than all other people. So, I mean, if we just had even our own black PayPal, I mean, some of the things that we could do in terms of reparations by incentivizing healthier behavior in our community using smart contracts would be significant. I just think that it would be a matter of sitting down with the individuals at summits like this. I think this is one of the most important things that happens every year. I would never miss it, because you've got people that are all engaged in how technology's converged on our community and how can we use it to move us forward. I just think we need to be careful about how we align ourselves with, I'll give you an example. My company, we've just partnered with probably the most advanced and most robust artificial intelligence platform using blockchain on the planet. They're from another community, so how do you go about a relationship like that? If we're gonna have diversity and inclusion, it needs to be on our own terms, and we need to make sure that the infrastructure that's being built, okay, you have this artificial intelligence program, and instead of us having to have a duplication of effort, we've also built a platform, not an app, something that, you know, the market cap is $5 million. I'm talking about another platform that will also generate jobs and opportunities and economically insulate our businesses, maybe using the data through community-based participatory research to validate the different ideas that come out of our community. I think that's a big thing, is we have to protect our ideas. And if we protect our ideas and we create economically insulated black-owned businesses or businesses owned by African descendants, then we can make sure that brothers and sisters that come out of prison and have that one strike on their record and can't find a meaningful job where they can have a livable wage, hey, you got a job waiting for you. We could start the training while you're, I mean, there's a lot of things we could do where reparations doesn't have to be cutting somebody a check. Reparations is something, I mean, we're creative, we'll figure it out. I mean, there's a lot of things, I've got some great things written down, but I'm sure a lot of people here have some incredible things that are written down. But I see reparations as something that is complex and something that it won't all be flushed out in 1 year. I think as we build and we grow and we think about what our children need, we think about protecting our elders, we start bringing the family unit together and putting reparations around healthy decision-making in our community. Man, money oscillates around opportunities like that. That's my thoughts.
I think that was a brilliant, brilliant point, brother. I'd like to add that there's something about you, my wife and I, we talk, again, we have 2 young children. I always tell her, main thing is to model and teach, right? We always, a lot of times, we preach or we talk about different things that we should be doing, even as a people. But sometimes I'm an observer of people, and oftentimes we're not modeling the behavior in which we actually want to see. So there's a piece that when people come in our home and they want to talk politics or whatever, I kind of hit them at the door on, they got to really be doing these 3 things, at least, to have a real discussion. One is banking black, right? The other is buying at least 50% of getting 50% of their services and goods from someone that looks like them as well. So, and then lastly, to actually be supporting black causes. And I say black cause, I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown, is that we have a lot of these celebrities and whatnot, they'll support things like St. Jude. St. Jude's a great organization. I'm not knocking St. Jude. But sickle cell is a bigger issue for us, right? So, so it's these types of things that I'm speaking to, right? And so it's basically, again, it's about modeling and teaching, and each of us can start there, coming out the gate, right? Each of us. So we have, people say, well, I tried a black bank with this, that, the other. But I always share, again, historically, right? The black bank was the only bank that we could one time go to. They were the only ones to give us a loan or a business opportunity or anything else. But we've kind of abandoned our institutions. Oftentimes it's the same thing when it comes to HBCUs. We have black folk who graduate from historically black colleges. I got friends, right? And they send their kids off to what they call the Ivy Leagues. Well, I'm thinking that, Howard and Hampton and Tuskegee and Morehouse and Spelman are our own Ivy Leagues, and they produce some incredible people. So we again have to start to reinvest in ourselves. We have to see ourselves as the magic that we are. And as he said, really protecting our ideas and our value. right? Because we will quickly sign over our ideas for Foods Go. And so again, knowing our value, our worth, and what it can do effectively in our communities, I think is a big part, a big step in what each of us can actually contribute to our own reparations. And again, you know, and I'll kind of end on this point of this, right? I don't really care who the hell the president is, because since we've had presidents, black people, the policies for us have always been the same, no matter who the president was. So we have to, again, we've been voting for, what is it now, 53, 54 years? And our standing in the country, whether it be home ownership, whether it be business owners, whether it be whatever we want to call it, the main categories, education, have either remained the same or they've declined, right, since we've been voting. And there's, you know, and to kind of just share a little bit more with that, is that, you know, these are statistics you guys can even look up for yourselves. But we've often said, oh, you know, black people don't vote. Well, that is actually not true. In this country, about 60% of all people vote. And of that, we're typically only a couple of percentage points beneath whites when it comes to that. So if they're voting at 60%, we're like at 58, 59, and some elections we're even over. So again, not discouraging people to vote, but my point is, again, that there are more important ways, I think, in pooling our resources, seeing value in ourselves collectively that can move us ahead a lot faster. And the last piece on that is we then have to be able to protect ourselves. So we talk about 40 acres and a mule. One of the things that the government did was take away their arms. When it comes to this whole idea of gun control, the only time we hear about it is when little white kids get shot up at white schools. But I was born in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago. I lived in D.C., and I live in Baltimore currently. 3 places that have some of the strictest gun laws on the books. And guess how many, you know, Russian rifles and whatnot you can find on those streets? So we're not, again, bringing them in, but that conversation is not had. And until, again, it's one in which we're leading the conversation, and we're talking about how it affects us. It's not a conversation I'm even willing to have. But again, in order to protect ourselves, we have to not drink the Kool-Aid and thinking that these things aren't important to move us ahead. To protect ourselves and our interests, we must be able to have things that do so.
I want to thank everybody for their contributions to this panel. This was fantastic. Everybody give them a round of applause. Thank you, fellas, very much.
Any question? We have a question on Slido for the panelists. Yeah. So if you have any question, go to Slido.
With all complete, utter love, honor, and respect, why is there no female here? And why am I the only one here asking? Seriously.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be the next few. There'll probably be an all-female panel at some point, too, probably.
The ambassador is coming. The ambassador is giving a keynote right after this.
Yeah, the keynote was a woman.
We have a keynote with the ambassador.
The keynote was a woman.
Yeah, we have an.
The most important speaker here was a woman.
So we have a question from Jomari.
That was very good. No question. It's just that, ask about.
My mother's here in spirit. I think you're right. You're right, sister. So I think we'll do better next time. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
We have one question for you guys from Jamari. The question is, would love thoughts on how opportunity zones and blockchain-related technology can be merged to meet the goals of Black Americans.
Well, about opportunity zones. So opportunity zones are good for investment in that they open up opportunities for allowing protections on investments in ways that give more security to the investor, so that you know that you're going to put your money into something good, but you're also going to get the money out of it. So I think that's where investors, very few, well, not very few, angel investors are the ones that are in it for the cause, whereas most investors are in it for the money. But if you can get in a place where, like an opportunity zone, where you can build up a community and also make money, this is where investment becomes a really beneficial means of building up communities while also giving somebody profit.
Yeah, this is a subject matter in which I'm very well versed, but I'd like to give a little history, though, before we start with that, is that we think about opportunity zones, right? New buzzwords sound really great, right? The once called ghettos, now they're opportunity zones. So who coined the phrase, right? So all narratives take life, right? So we have to be careful about those narratives. But nevertheless, opportunity zones can still, I think, there's a thing where we need to be first. We need to kind of really, when it comes to a lot of this, right? We're at Bitcoin, we need to be first. We need to start really thinking about it from that standpoint. Opportunity zones will only benefit us if, one, if we're thinking from a collective standpoint of serving the people, and we are first, right? So, we know that it's often harder, or we believe it's harder, because those who actually are going to be funders of opportunity zones are having to use capital gains. I'm not sure how. And that's probably a question when we talk about the Bitcoin and its capital gains, but how that is addressed and how maybe that can actually be utilized, again, as a resource to be an investor in opportunity zones, because not everyone, you can't use just normal capital. It has to be capital from gains from some asset, whether it's stock or a sale of a property or growth in a business or whatever the case may be. Yes, but we have to be first.
Opportunity zones and other macro level initiatives like I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. A lot of great stuff that is out there, but it doesn't necessarily speak to what's happening on the ground floor in our communities, the people that actually live there. What a lot of people don't know is all the opportunity zones are actually food deserts, which is a funny thing. And so there's something that they say either give a man a fish or teach a man to fish. And most other communities say teach a man to fish. But if somebody's hungry, how are they going to learn to eat? It's just one of those things where it becomes an issue. I think it's really important that, like the brother said, that we find and get out in front of these initiatives that are meant to help us and find out how are we able to tweak or finesse this to be able to work in our favor. Because currently I see opportunity zones as gentrification, being honest with you. It's gentrification, both physically and digitally. It's the type of thing where if we don't create some form of standardization to measure the type of impact that it's actually going to have in our communities and what the impetus is for change in our community, and then hold them to that, then we might find ourselves needing 40 acres a lot sooner than what we thought.
Yeah, so just practically speaking, I think a lot of that's just spot on. What I see when people are talking about, the zones is there's not any intrinsic value to the zones from the investor standpoint, and they would just as soon invest in, soybeans if you're going to get a subsidy there, or some other sort of tax benefit, right? There's not enough sort of social good and maybe PR around that really is that makes it kind of powerful. And I think that is the thing that would make it sort of a unique and more powerful tool.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I think we have to be first. And if we're not first and we're not thinking collectively, then exactly, it is gentrification as well.
Right.
Yeah. No, if we are investing in it, right, and there's a groundswell and people, there's a tension around it, then it becomes something that is unique and powerful, right? It's different from a subsidized investment. There's generates, for lack of a better word, good feelings around kind of getting involved in it, right? As opposed to just the naked financial return that you look at compared to other investment opportunities.
I'm sorry, I didn't go through SIGO, but are you aware of anybody who has put forth a sustainable plan for economic sovereignty as it relates to the very subjects you're talking about?
I have.
Could you share it with us?
I'm not sure if this is the venue, but I would definitely say that in terms of all these different factors, we need an ecosystem. We need an ecosystem. We don't need an app. We don't need just money. We need people to come together in a way that allows for our best and brightest to have a pipeline that they can build into so that they don't have to, as of right now, our best and brightest engineers, there's not enough jobs in our community because we don't have a black tech company. There's no black Microsoft. So I have to hope that the Diversity Inclusion Initiative over at Twitter, where they have to hire 1% to 2% people, that in the other groups of people don't take the LGBT community. There's just a lot of things that are happening to stop us from being able to move ourselves forward. In terms of an initiative that would move us forward, we're working with the city of Pittsburgh. We're looking at some things here in DC as well to be able to say, if you're going to participate, if you're going to work with our community, these are the standards in which you have to be able to do that. And we have some very large partners in what we're doing. But at the same time, we're not shy. We're very intentional about the fact that this many jobs are going to be created in our community. This many opportunities, this much money needs to be given out to it. If we don't make those stipulations, then, they're laughing at us. So I'm sorry? And I would just say that
We were just saying, if you don't mind, we were just saying that you need to follow the example that Mayor Barry gave to us back in the day. He insisted that you hire black contractors. He insisted
Yes.
that you had jobs. And all of that
Yeah.
has changed a bit, too much. So we just suggesting that you follow the same program that he had back in the day.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah, Dr. Claude Anderson has some good things as well, and with our platform, we believe that in over 10 years we can create 50,000 economically insulated black-owned businesses and 12.5 million jobs over the next 10 years. So
I would vote for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously we could go on for hours and hours. Let's have a big hand for the dream team, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Bates, Gary Rahman, Tony Foster, PJ, and Christopher Mapandera. Give them another big round of applause.